I see friends and they're kind of still stuck in some of those moments. You still see guys who are in the military. It's interesting, we do have a lot of guys suffering from post-traumatic stress. We do have a suicide epidemic going on, especially in the Marine Raider community. We just lost two Raiders in July to suicide, who I was really close with. But you see the guys who kind of made it in a sense and were in shape, were looking good. And you're seeing some of the other guys who are just overweight, probably hitting the booze a little bit more than they have to. So now we're just trying to figure out how can we get these other guys to kind of jump on the other side of the street and live the life the way we're living it. And we're going to be putting together some programs through Battle Brothers where we think we can have this. And we're starting to call out suicide for what it is. It's terrible. It's tough. But you got to think about the collateral damage you're leaving behind if you're going to hit that button.
Thank you to all of those who have subscribed recently. That has been a huge boost. Don't think that we haven't noticed. We love the comments, we love the engagement, we love the views, and the thing that helps us the most is every time our subscribers go up, we reach more people and we're able to keep producing higher quality videos. So please, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and let's get on to the show. Welcome to Bear It All, the Kintsugi Chronicles, here on the I Am Not Okay channel, where we gather our broken pieces in search of gold. My name is John Bear, and today I am joined by a very special guest, good friend of mine, high school teammate on our football championship team, Mr. Bryan Buckley. Bryan, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, John. How are you doing?
Wonderful. I'm just going to give everybody a cliff notes of our background, but I know you're here for a very special message, and I want to make sure we spend most of our time talking about that today. For those of you out there that don't know, I went to high school with Bryan. Bryan, we played for Coach Pettine, the legendary Coach Pettine. We won 2 state titles together. And after high school, kind of lost contact with Bryan. I mean, he went off to do his thing. That's what happens. And come to find out years later, after we reunited, unfortunately, around Coach's passing, I found out you went to UMass to play football. And when 9/11 hit, essentially you were ready for duty, and you decided that was a more important mission and joined the Marine Corps and ended up being deployed and saw all kinds of stuff that most people hope to never see. And you made it back out alive. And yet there were still things that were hard and challenging. And my guess is you were looking for something and you found cannabis as a tool to help maybe cope or re-enter into what we'll say civilian life. Because again, after the things that you've seen, it's probably pretty hard to sleep at night. And now, as I understand, Bryan is the founder of the Helmand Valley Growers Company, which is a cannabis company. And so here we are, former athletes, high school teammates, and now we're going to talk about cannabis. Bryan, can you tell everybody out there, why are you fighting for cannabis like you fought for the USA?
Yeah, no, that's great, and I appreciate the intro. Yeah, it's very interesting how we got to where we are today. When I was at University of Massachusetts playing football, and then that's when 9/11 happened. So I decided to get into the military, and I transferred to Villanova University, graduated from there, and received a commission to the Marine Corps. And let's see, like my Marine Corps time, I did 1 deployment in the infantry. I went to Fallujah, Iraq. When I returned from that, they said, why don't you try out for this thing called Marine Reconnaissance? Tried out, made it. They sent me right back to Iraq 6 months later. This time I was operating in the entire Al Anbar province, which is Western Iraq. So people remember back then, you kind of heard the Sunni Triangle of Death and all that stuff. That's kind of where we were with Ramadi and Fallujah. And when I returned from that deployment, we just started up our special operations unit called the Marine Raiders, and had an opportunity to go to what we would call selection, which is your tryout. A lot of us went in, not a lot of us made it out, but I was fortunate enough to be one of the ones selected, and then spent a majority of my career in the Marine Corps in special operations, fortunately as a team commander, which was like fantastic. But I did have a little incident when I was in a place called the Helmand province in Afghanistan, and it was in July of 2012, and I got hit by what they call an underbarrel grenade launcher.
Hmm.
So basically, it sounded like a fly ball kind of flying by my head. And you just knew, though, I either said the word fuck, but I was definitely thinking the word fuck. I knew they got me. And that thing cranked off and sent shrapnel throughout majority of the left side of my body, all the way up into my head. So I did have to I had a big chunk of metal like right in front of my ear, and they had to remove that, do some plastic surgery, and try to put me back together again. But one fortunate thing from that was my surgeon, he was like a former Army Ranger.
Hmm.
So he kind of knew the lifestyle that we lived. So two of my other teammates were wounded at the same time. Joey, he was one of our dog handlers. He was hit underneath his, like basically went underneath his ballistic plates into his stomach.
Hmm.
So he went on a kind of crazy ride where at one moment he's in the Helmand province, Afghanistan. It's like 120 degrees with like 99% humidity. And then he wakes up and he's in Bethesda, Maryland, like 2 weeks later. Like he just totally kind of went on a vision quest.
Wow.
And then Max was one of our corpsmen, and Max lost a chunk of his tricep.
Mm.
So I remember Max was working on guys, and all of a sudden he would just kind of stop, and you would hear him in pain. He would yell "fuck," and then he would get right back at it and start helping Joey out again. And Max ended up going over to SEAL Team 6 after that deployment. So even with half of a tricep, he still had what it took to make it over there. When, like I said, I woke up, my surgeon was a former Army Ranger. They wanted to send me home. He asked me, what do I want to do? And I'm like, what are my choices? And he's like, if you want to stay, I'll keep you. And I'm like, then I'm staying. He goes, figured you'd say that. And he's like, all right, Captain Buckley's going to stay. The nurses were kind of like, well, wait a minute, X, Y, and Z. He goes, hey, I don't care. My patient, my call. This is what we're doing. And we did another surgery about 24 hours later. And then they gave me like a 48-hour break and did a final surgery. And that's when they went back in for another scrub, essentially. They're trying to get as much shrapnel out of my body as they could. And then
Hmm.
they healed me back up. And the next day I walked 3 miles on a treadmill. Then the day after that, I did like a 3 mile run on and did my 20 pull-ups, and they cleared me for full duty. So literally 6 days later, I was back out on mission. So I didn't miss a single one. And that's just due to the amazing medical staff that we had there. But fast forward, and it was around 2016 timeframe. I started up a nonprofit called Battle Brothers Foundation, and we help out veterans on a three-tier approach of personal, medical, and economic. And during that, someone, I was just dealing with all this pain. I still have shrapnel in my body. I just couldn't sleep. And someone's like, why don't you try some cannabis? I was kind of desperate at that point. I've already been declared 100% disabled, all that stuff, and they're giving me pills all over the place. And I tried cannabis, and it worked, and it kept working. So I started thinking to myself, why can I go to the VA and get like 15 pills like that when I could just go use the screen plan and it's doing everything I needed to do? So I met up with some members of Congress and just through a conversation, but pretty much the whole point of it was, what do you need from me to help get medical cannabis into the VA system so it can be prescribed to veterans? They said, if you can go get data and American doctors, you'll have a good argument. So I partnered with a firm out of Israel called Niametic Healthcare and Research Services
Hmm.
and the University of California at Irvine, and we were awarded what they call an institutional review board, which falls under the FDA, and it means you've been cleared for human trials.
Mm.
So it's really tough. They're really meticulous. I mean, they're literally saying you can put this thing into a human being, and we are saying it's safe. And usually they're saved for universities, medical groups, colleges, things like that, not for private companies, but we were able to get it. So it was a really big deal. And we were trying to think of a way how to fund this. And really, the idea came from a Paul Newman salad dressing bottle where it says 100% of profits to charity. I'm like, why don't we start an adult use brand here in California? And we could take the profits from that and donate it back to Bauer Brothers to help fund our research. So we've been doing that. And we decided to call the company Helmand Valley Growers Company, or HVGC. And those four letters are very significant in the Marine Raider world. If you're a Marine Raider and you serve in the Helmand province, you become part of the Helmand Valley Gun Club and you get an HVGC tattoo. So we wanted to kind of do this, a little bit of shout out to the men and women who served in the Helmand province. When I briefed the Raiders about it, the guys were cool. They're like, not only are we cool with the name, but can we get a job with you when we get out? I'm like, yeah, that's what we want to do, is have veterans making medicine for veterans.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a lot of fun doing that and being able to tell the stories of like the legends of Helmand and make sure their names are forgotten. And in a weird way, over there, we were fighting, and we can get into this more about what the fighting was like in Afghanistan, but we were fighting basically the heroin that they would sell. That's how they would fuel their insurgency. So the opiates. And back here, we're kind of fighting the opiates that are being kind of pushed on us. So it's kind of a weird dual meaning. But one thing we're really excited to announce is we're actually in the hemp space right now. So we do sell THCA and Delta products, which are federally legal. And so now we're taking it nationwide, and we've just opened up business in Doylestown at a place called Smoke Shack, and some places in Quakertown like Smoker's Destiny. But the really cool thing is we got a really nice following, and you can only buy our product in California just due to the regulations with cannabis. But now going into this hemp space, we can get things out to everyone, and you can even order it online and have it delivered to your house. And we got some really cool things like apparel line, all that stuff that's going to follow. But it's just been really humbling to see how many people kind of rally behind veterans and want to help support us.
Yeah.
So in a long way there, John, that's kind of how we got to where we are now. So I've been talking way too much. So let's pass it back to you.
Brian, that's first of all, thank you for sharing all of that. I can't imagine half of what you've been through, so I won't even try. I can tell you that cannabis has been something for me in my own PTSD and trauma. You knew my brother, Tony. Tony was a ball boy on our state championship teams, and I lost him to suicide back in 2007. Something tells me you probably know a few people that have gone that route as well. And for me, when that happened, my whole world was just kind of thrown upside down, and I didn't know what to do. And I remember getting myself into a therapy. I was on antidepressants at the time, and I just felt like a zombie. I didn't feel good, and I didn't feel like I was living any kind of a semblance of a real life that would be worth remembering or worthwhile, and it sucked. And losing him really kind of forced me to look at how do I want to actually exist here. And one of the things that I said to myself was, I don't want to take antidepressants and a bunch of medicines if I don't have to, kind of similar like you were taking pills and being thrown all these things. But what I do remember was when I would use cannabis, and unfortunately I was not getting it, we'll say legally back in the day. I was just getting it however I could off the black market. And it was the thing that worked for me too, Brian. For whatever reason, it didn't make me sit in the couch. If anything, it allowed me to be a productive member of society, go to work, not flip out all the time, not just be angry. And so through that process and going to therapy and all of that, cannabis for me was something that helped me kind of shift my sights. And now I'm sitting in a gym that I own, and a big reason that I started that was Tony had a bunch of kettlebells and gym equipment because he was a pretty big kid, and he was starting to lose weight and get into CrossFit and that kind of stuff and feel strong and better. And then that happened. But I had all his equipment. I decided not to get rid of it, but to use it myself. For me, it felt like all right, well, I'm going to rebuild myself with this stuff. And other people started to notice that and started to ask me for help. And that's what sort of has led to me taking really the base that we learned from Coach Carey and Coach Joe in the weight room, dude, that just the way we did things and how in the fourth quarters we were crushing people, and our attention to detail and that focus on being stronger is what I brought here, but more for the regular average adult, we'll say, not just somebody who's playing high school sports, because I was all beat up and banged up, so I couldn't train like I did back then, but I still I needed a physical outlet, right? And I also wanted to be stronger too. And that led me to realizing I felt strong enough to start talking about these things that were helping me, and cannabis was one of them. And I remember when we kind of reconnected, 6-7 years ago, just kind of taking note of what you said, wow, he's really doing this. And then I remember a couple years later, I sent you a copy of my book, and I was like, hey man, I don't know how, but I'd love to talk about this and somehow help others understand the benefits of cannabis. And I think that's what I want to bring it back to, Brian. You said it helped and it kept helping. What did it help you with? Like, what were you able to do by using cannabis that you felt like you couldn't, or it tamped down your pain, or you were able to be more productive? But let me understand that story, because I'm very curious.
Yeah, and I like one thing you brought up when you were sharing was about your post-traumatic stress, and that's what I really try to harp on people. Sometimes I think it just gets associated with like military members that they're the ones who get post-traumatic stress, and PTS is not a military thing, it's a human condition. It can happen to anyone. And we all have our severities here and there, and people deal with things differently. I tell people you might see, my world in like a firefight you might get into, and I walk away fine from it. But one of my friends just it really messed him up. He saw something, and just whatever it may be, you just never know how it can hit you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really big that we need to kind of say this is a human condition. It can happen to any of us, and you got to accept it and kind of deal with it. And for a lot of people, kind of the easy way is finding alcohol, right? Like you kind of get instant results. It's accepted by the world. Big deal. You're having the drinks.
Yeah.
And especially the way I was in the military, our operation tempo was so fast. We would just, we would joke, call ourselves land pirates. I mean, we would just kind of go deploy, we'd come back, we would dominate some bars. We joke, oh, it's getting a little hot back here. We need to kind of leave the country and let things die out for a little bit, and we go fight. And, you wouldn't really talk about, but you just never knew, like, hey, I'm back for 6 months, gone for 7, back and forth we go. When's it going to be my time? So you kind of live life to its fullest, essentially.
Wow.
And I think when you get out, you're kind of doing the same thing, but you really have no wars to go fight. Now you're just kind of spiraling.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was just like when I noticed what it did for the pain and kind of give me the relief, that's when I got really kind of turned on to it. And it kind of started taking me away from alcohol, where I just didn't really need the booze anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And what it does, obviously it helps out with sleep. But for me, I kind of have like a routine. Like I don't use it during the daytime.
Mm-hmm.
When I come back from work, having 2 kids, you got to really start kind of compartmentalizing things, because a lot of times, and just people with A-type personalities, you're going to bring your work home with you and you're going to be constantly thinking about it. Well, that's not exactly fair for the other people in your life, like your family. So what cannabis will do is I'll come home and I'll take a vape pen. I'll take like 3 hits off my vape pen. And that kind of shuts down all the white noise and actually helps me focus and be more present with my family, and help them, we'll go play sports or do homework or whatever. And then when I get them in bed and they're ready to go, I'll take some more cannabis, and that usually gets me going to help me sleep. So
Okay.
nice thing with my routine is I kind of warm up my endocannabinoid system a little bit by having a little bit get into my body, kind of shut things down. And then when I'm ready to go to bed, it's kind of like I'm warmed up, I'm ready to go. I take some more hits off my vape pen. I'm going to be asleep within about 30 minutes. And even when I wake up in the middle of the night to use the restroom, whatever, it's not a big deal. I can just go right back to bed
Mm-hmm.
and get a full night of sleep. And that's like your number one medicine. So for that, that's what cannabis has helped me. But, I tell people it's not a silver bullet. Like here's a joint, your life's going to be great.
Yeah.
There are things you got to work on yourself as well. And things that have helped me is really kind of focus on like stoicism, and reading Marcus Aurelius and his book Meditations really put things in perspective for me. Like, who cares what people say about you or this or that? Like, there's really nothing you can do about it. And in reality, people just don't know you that well enough to really make a comment and you kind of redirect your life or anything.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the only people I have to answer to are my wife and my 2 kids. And that's what I just kind of worry on.
Yep.
And everything else is kind of just falling in line. So it's kind of been like accepting my post-traumatic stress. You never get rid of your demons, but you got to learn to fly above them every day. And it's literally one day at a time, and you just do it. But cannabis has kind of helped me stay more present on things, and again, help me get some sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one medicine for anything for any ailment you might have.
Agreed. Yeah, no, sleep is the number one thing. I mean, if they want to come to the gym here and work out, you have to be able to recover. And then to that note, then I'm curious. So like during your day when you're not able to or choosing not to use cannabis because you have to work and focus and kind of be in that space, which I completely understand. Are you, like, you're clearly in great shape, so are you still exercising, I'm guessing, and doing what you can do that way and using that as well as a tool? Thank you for making it this far in our show. If you're feeling overwhelmed, that's okay. Just know that you're not alone, that we're here with you, and we're going to work through this together. If you need some help or assistance, dial 988 or head over to our website, www.iamnotok.com. www.iamnotok.com for a space where you can breathe. And if you want to send us an email and let us know how you're doing, we can get back to you as soon as we can and make sure that you're on the right path. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, I always say, like, I always do a morning workout just to get the body going, and then I'll do some sort of thing at nighttime. I really don't touch weights too much anymore.
Interesting. Yeah.
But even when you're kind of having, I tell people, if you're having like those moments where you're pissed or you're stressed or whatever you're doing, do 100 push-ups. Like either you do one set of 100 or 100 sets of one. I don't care. But by the time you're done,
Yeah.
you're going to get that endorphin drop. You're going to feel a little bit better about yourself. And you might even say, like, why was I stressing out about that thing? And that really kind of helps out versus like, I'm going to go to a bar, have a couple of drinks and chill out.
Yep.
Well, that can be another spiral thing. And, for me too, it's like, I literally was just I felt like I was just getting stagnant and just kind of not progressing in my life. So I just said, okay, wrote down my goals. And then I just put a line on a piece of paper and said things that are helping me, things and people help me get to my goal, and things and people that are not helping me get to my goal. And I just eliminated that other stuff that was negative. And that's part of the discipline part. It's like, hey, you set your goals, but you got to be disciplined to do the extra things that need to get done to get there. If you just kind of keep going through life wishing for something to happen, it's probably not going to go your way. But if you go out there and you set a goal, want to make it happen, and you're disciplined about your approach, you'll just see things turn around. And that's really helped me where, big deal, I went to war, big deal, I got shot, whatever. That happened, that's in the past. Use that stuff to help me be better in the present, but don't sit there and just reflect on that. Like, for me and you, I'll never forget in 97 when we won our first state title. We're about to come through in Doylestown, and they had all the bells and whistles going on, like the fire department. I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah.
And Coach Pettine said to us, tonight you guys are champions. Tomorrow you'll be champions. For the rest of your life, you're going to be a champion. But if this is the greatest moment in your life, I have failed you. And, reflecting on that years later, it's like, yeah, your life is like a storybook, and it's just a bunch of chapters to it. And you got to say, okay, that was a cool part of my life, but that chapter's over. Now what I'm going to use to make my next chapter. And again, at the end of your life, if your life was a book, would someone want to read about it? And I just refuse to say I'm just going to be some high school hero that my glory days were back in Doylestown.
Yeah.
No, those are great moments. I love to reflect on them, and we have a bond, and we'll always have that with each other. But I wanted to use what Coach Pettine taught me to do things greater in life. And, I did some really cool things in the military. Awesome. That's done. Now I'm in another phase of my life where I'm raising children. I have a business and trying to do some great things. And that's what I'm focusing on. And ultimately, if you're just present, I think that makes life a lot more fulfilling for people versus reflecting on things in the past. Just live in the moment you're in right now and be the best that you can be at that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I could have said it much better myself. I am fascinated with how you kind of, like, was your discipline kind of honed with Coach Pettine or before that? Like, where did that sort of like drive in you come to be able to be like, you know what, that happened, but I'm not going to stay there. I'm going to move forward. I think a lot of people get stuck in the what happened, but they don't understand or look forward or feel like they can do the next thing. Like, how did you keep it going after some of those things?
Yeah, I think like I always kind of had that like determination about me, even as a kid. My parents always said if I wanted something, I would get like very focused and would just go until I accomplished whatever I wanted to accomplish.
Yeah.
And, definitely, playing for a person like Coach Pettine and Coach Carey, where it definitely was the devil's in the details, and you had to be very disciplined and you had to make sacrifices to be successful in that program.
Yeah.
And to me, it really was kind of, I saw a Tony Hawk show on MTV or no, HBO. It's called Until the Wheels Fall Off. And it's like a really great thing about their lives as skateboarders and, just what they all went through. And Tony Hawk's talking about a time like, his video game was going nuts. He's like, I couldn't even understand the gravity of stuff. And I'm sitting at a meeting and a guy just slides me $20 million. And he's like, that's what's happening right now. And he's like, I got hooked on the worst drug you can ever get hooked on. And that's being a celebrity.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm flying to Monaco for some awards event that I'm not even nominated for, but I'm Tony Hawk. I need to be there. And, he was kind of alluding there was probably some infidelity and things going on where he just wasn't happy with who he was. And he said, for me to get to where I got to in my life, I have an insane amount of discipline in me. So he's like, why am I just not using that discipline to focus on these things? And it totally turned his life around. And I started thinking the same thing, like, to do what we did in high school and then to do some of the things I did in the military, that wasn't like I got lucky and it worked out. No, I was disciplined about how to get there and achieve my goals. So why am I not using that same discipline to do what I want to do now? And that was kind of like the aha moment I had. And that's where I just started kind of reflecting and saying, okay, let's use that discipline you have and put it towards what you want to accomplish. And let's just get going. And that's really kind of helped me going in life where I see friends and they're kind of still stuck in some of those moments. You still see guys who are in the military. It's interesting, we do have a lot of guys suffering with post-traumatic stress. We do have a suicide epidemic going on, especially in the Marine Raider community. We just lost 2 Raiders in July to suicide who I was really close with. But you see the guys who kind of made it in a sense and were in shape, were looking good. And you're seeing some of the other guys who were just overweight, probably hitting the booze a little bit more than they have to. So now we're just trying to figure out how can we get these other guys to kind of jump on the other side of the street and live the life the way we're living it. And we're going to be putting together some programs through Battle Brothers where we think we can have this. And we're starting to call out suicide for what it is. It's terrible. It's tough. But you got to think about the collateral damage you're leaving behind if you're going to hit that button. You're gone, fine, but everyone else now for the rest of their lives are now dealing with it of what could I have done? Is there something else I could have happen there? And what's scary about the suicide is you're not seeing like traditional signs and symptoms, like someone going through a rough divorce or losing their job or something where it's like, oh man. I mean, we've literally had guys who they're on Instagram Live one day saying how much they love life. And then the next day, their parents are finding them with a gunshot wound to the head and they're gone. And it's like baffling to us. So we're just going to try to find a way to maybe throw enough shit at the wall that something sticks.
Yeah. That
we stop these Americans from committing suicide. Because, one alarming stat I tell people, and this is from a Boston University white paper, and I think it was concluded in like the summer of 2020. But during the global war on terrorism, we lost 7,070 men and women on the battlefield. During that same period, we've lost nearly 31,000 active duty and veterans to suicide. So in theory, it's more dangerous for me to be back here in America sitting on a podcast with you than it was when I was doing stuff in Fallujah or in Africa or Southeast Asia or Afghanistan. And that's just incredibly unacceptable. And unfortunately, our political leaders are doing nothing about it.
Mm-hmm. Bryan, you're hitting on because honestly now my mission in life after losing Tony to suicide, I believe I want to help. I don't know if help is the right word, but be of service to people. Because I believe Tony didn't have to go that route. I believe if he had the tools necessary, the way to find that discipline, the way to look forward and see what he's done and accomplished, but be able to turn it around and use that pain as like an activation energy out of that space. And I think that's after losing him, I did similar is when like I turned back on the discipline and the devil in the details from Coach Carey and Coach Pettine, and was kind of like the best time that I ever felt in my life where I was like doing something outside of myself. I was part of this team and we did this big thing together. And that was the thing that drove, like I was literally, within the first month, I was on the edge of like, I was seriously like ready to press the button. And the only thing that stopped me was I was like, okay, well, I already know how to get out of pain. He showed me the way, so I know how to do that, right? Let me try everything else first. And if it doesn't work, then I'll come back to that and I know how to do that. But I decided to go this route and to give it a go this way and to find the tools one at a time if I had to piece them together. And that's led to, exercise and then understanding nutrition and mindset and anything external, we'll say, like cannabis that can help kind of put you in a better state of mind to help you with some clarity and moving forward. Because what I've understood, and I read, it was like from the Global Health Organization, over 800,000 people a year commit suicide.
Yeah.
And
it's wild. And there's probably more, to be honest with you.
exactly. That's just what's reported.
Yeah.
So to me, I had this weird mental stat where I was like, if I can bring 1% of those people off of that line and put them into like what we're doing, we'd have a whole fucking army to like start attacking suicide. Because honestly, I guess my mission, to not think about all the horrible shit that I've been through or the PTSD or whatever, I make my mission so big as if like, I believe I can stop suicide, but that's what I think about every day to keep me from thinking about things that might send me down a dark spiral. Because like you said, it's like an everyday sort of recheck in and make sure that we're putting in the solid foundation for what we need to be able to be present. And those are the things very much that I want to share with others, talk about more, whatever. So let me ask you, like you say our leaders aren't doing anything. Is it more up to guys like me and you that have been touched by it and to kind of bring it private and then just get enough people that are so upset about these things to make enough noise that they start listening?
Yeah, I really do. All politics are local. For what I've just dealing with things in Washington, D.C., and it's, we're in a very interesting time right now politically where people are just really dug in. I think people feel party over country. They're more concerned about what Democrats are thinking or Republicans are thinking. My political party is America. I think both the D's and R's have kind of lost their minds.
Gotcha.
And, I was talking with, name drop. Like I've fortunately become friends with some like really like cool people and like famous people in the Philly area. And someone who I consider a real dear friend is Ray Didinger. And when I was just back in Philadelphia, whenever I come back in town, Ray and I will meet up to grab a cheesesteak. Or when I was back in May, he actually hooked us up and got us amazing seats at the baseball game for the Phillies and got us a tour and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But I was with Ray last week and we were having a cheesesteak at this place called Cleaver's on 18th Street. Awesome cheesesteak place. So shout out Cleaver's. But we talk sports, but then we've been friends. Coach Pettine introduced us back in 2010 or 11. Coach Pettine was getting a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Maxwell Club.
Yep, I remember.
Coach had me come and, it was an honor. Like, kind of had me come represent the CB West players. And, I was in my dress blues and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Ray and I just kind of kicked out friendship. So, like I said, here we are. Yeah, we talk Eagles and Phillies, but we also talk politics. And he was telling me, he had a real good buddy of his was ready to get in and going to run, and he was kind of shocked.
Mm-hmm.
But the guy's like, I'm going to make a couple phone calls to people and just see what their experiences were like as a representative. So he talked to John Runyon, who used to play for the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't know, John Runyon was a congressman for 2 years. He did one term and was like, I've had enough. And the guy was saying, John, I want to do this, I want to do that, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yep, you're saying all the right things, but here's the reality of your job. When you show up, you're going to spend the first 5 hours on the phone each day calling up people for money. Then your afternoon, you'll be in a committee meeting where nothing gets done because the Democrats are going to block the Republicans, Republicans are going to block the Democrats because that's just what they do. And by the time he was done his first year, he was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm not even going to run for re-election. So unfortunately, it seems like to be in a position of power, it's all about the money and who's going to pay you. And I actually had a person who wanted me to be a congressman. She's a very powerful person here in California. If I did run, I guess it would probably be in a Republican side of the house, which people freak out, but I'm for limited government.
Okay.
So which one's like that? And to do this in California, you kind of have to kiss her ring. So she brought me in for a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
said, Bryan, I've come up with an idea and I think it's gonna be really good. I think you should be in Congress. I'm like,
Hmm.
wow, okay. I'm like, what does that entail? And she's like, it's not hard. I'll go out and get $6 million. We just need to figure out where to put you. So
Hmm.
I'm like, oh wow. And I'm driving down I-5 South thinking, haha, I'm gonna be a congressman. That's gonna be cool.
Hmm.
Then it hit me like $6 million. I'm like, does that mean I owe 6 million favors? And I'm like, son of a bitch, that's what it's all about. So I'm like, why don't you just go out and make a boatload of money and go buy one of these people and let them take the arrows in the back and stuff like that. So
Okay.
that's kind of where our political state is. And pharmaceutical is such a powerful industry. I mean, we saw that with COVID,
Hmm.
that they don't like cannabis. I mean, it is shown that when a state goes legal cannabis, they take, and my numbers might be off, but I think it's around like a $2 billion hit they'll take, because people are finding alternatives with the cannabis and they don't need to be on the pills.
Yep.
So they don't like that and they're lobbying hard against it. And that's where we're seeing a lot of the stalemate right now. I mean, for example, safe banking is a big deal for the cannabis industry.
Hmm.
But right now, we can't bank in a Bank of America or Wells Fargo.
Right.
They want our money, but we just can't do it because we don't have FDIC approval. Well, with safe banking, that would eliminate it, and we'd be able to bank in regular banks and be a regular business. And the votes are there. Like the House already passed it. It's up to the Senate. But Democrat Chuck Schumer he is the one person holding this up. The Democrats are coming out and saying it. And probably the reason why is pharmaceuticals are like not so fast. And they're just going to kind of wait, probably to see a company like us when we actually prove the medical benefits and we develop a formulation. They will probably come and buy us. And then they'll do it on a mass scale and they'll tell Congress, vote for it. We're good now because they can make money out of it. That's kind of how I see this thing ending. And it's sad, but that's the game or the game board in front of us that we have to play.
So you're saying there's a chance?
I think there's a chance. It will happen. It's just at a time when the conditions are set right for them so they can make their money.
Yeah. Okay. It's
Not
a
about our health or our benefit. It's going to be how can they monetize off of it?
Well, I think that's a great place to kind of like pull this to an end. I know you have a hard stop today. That's something that I want to dig into a little more in the future and kind of understand and help people understand, because you just gave a great overview, basically, of probably what a lot of industries, not just cannabis, is up against when it comes to big business and politics. But at the end of the day, Bryan, what I believe what you're doing is for the benefit of the people, like you said, and especially the people in your world that you know are touched by this. I can see your passion when you post something. I'm just like, man, like I just want to like be part of that like energetic exchange of like doing things like that for the world. So man, I'm just going to say thank you so much for what you're doing for veterans, for regular people like us. Thank you for what you did years ago in fighting and keeping our country in a place where we can have these kind of conversations, which are really, really, really important. And I do hope that, I didn't scare you away and you'll be willing to come back and talk a little bit, some more about some other the stuff that we went through. But Bryan, thank you so much for being here. And man, I wish you the best and keep kicking ass, brother.
Yeah, no, same to you. And absolutely, anytime you want me back on here, I think there's a lot we can discuss, and I think a lot that people need to hear, and some dark truths of things. And I know, I remember Tony very well. I mean, Tony was like my guy. Like he just took a liking to me and would always want to carry my helmet or do something. And it was shocking to find out what happened.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's how a lot of this is. It's like, wait, what? When you kind of hear this news. So I really appreciate what you're doing. I know with your mother, you guys are having some really heart to heart talks, and that's really brave of you. And hope more people can start doing that stuff. And at the end of the day, it's okay if you're going through a rough spot. It's okay if you want to raise your hand, like, I need some help, because that's how things get done. And for you to step up and saying, you know what, I was in a dark place and I was thinking this, but let me use that to maybe talk to others. You save one life, you save a million lives. So kudos to what you're doing. And yeah, anytime you want me on your show, I'm here. And I really appreciate what you're doing. And really kind of taking that step forward out of the darkness and trying to bring some light to a very serious subject that we need to discuss more.
Well, I feel like I have a teammate in you, Bryan, and it makes it a little less scary and a little less lonely feeling to do that. And I'm glad we're back on the same team again and kicking ass. So I look forward to the next one.
All right, brother. Well, best to you and best to the family, man. And we'll talk soon and keep up the great work.
Thanks, Bryan. Be well. Thank you for listening to our show. If you're interested in how we've gotten this far, I've put together a small guide that has a 3-step process at no cost. You can get that at www.iamnotok.com/truth. www.iamnotok.com/truth. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you on the inside. Be well.